5. Welcome back, everybody, to the PEO Speedwagon podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rick Johnson, joined with co-host Ryan Shapiro. Welcome to season 3, Ryan.
Yeah, season 3. Is it? Are you're the only one that's counting?
Counting. I'm keeping track.
You're keeping track.
I'm keeping track. I know
Listeners
are keeping track.
They are keeping track.
Yeah. They've got a tally behind them of how many episodes we've put out.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe technically we're up to 32 episodes at this point.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's quite a few. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
That's a lot of people we've talked to. That's a lot of conversations we've had. It's a lot of topics we've covered. And excited
we'll get to close 50 by the time this thing's done.
I think so. You mean in
season?
By season 3 itself?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, looking at just the guests that we have lined up for this season, that'll get us almost halfway to 50, it seems. So we've got some awesome guests coming this way.
Mm-hmm.
But for this one, we wanted to come back to our roots with Ryan and I and talk to you guys a little bit about a topic we don't think that we've covered probably enough, and is also a little timely, which is that people need to be focusing on the fall selling season a little early, which is right now. And so with Ryan's experience in the space, he knows that right now is when you kind of have that lull of the summer season, but really you need to be kind of charging yourself up to start thinking about the fall selling season and what it's going to look like then. And so I kind of want to throw it to you, Ryan, a little bit here and say, what's your message to people who are PEO sales reps out there at this time of year? They're just about to have their 4th of July fun, but you have a message for them that they need to be focused a little bit on work.
Yeah, you're going to have to be, at PEO, you've got a nice little marketing campaign called Small Business Summer.
Mm-hmm.
TM. It's not actually.
We got seltzers.
Yeah, we have seltzers. Which kind of is pointed at the fact, like during the summer, things tend to slow a little bit. Like summer Fridays start to bleed into summer Thursdays.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's, because people's kids are home and because it is the summer and everything warms up, there's this desire to kind of balance life a little bit more with work during the summer. And the reality is, for a PEO sales rep, which is one of the constituents of this show, is there's no more important time in the summer to do 2 things, which is 1, load up your pipeline.
Yeah.
Load up your pipeline and 2, sharpen your skills. Train. Because when you get into the throes of the fall selling season, it's too late to build pipeline. And there won't be the opportunity to train. And you have to be kind of all cylinders need to be firing on both fronts when you hit Labor Day. And so doing it now and having a strategy for how you do it now couldn't be more important. And that's how you have to use your summer.
Interesting. So how long should the training continue as of right now and kind of getting in that zone? When do you feel like the switch over happens and you can say, no more training, I'm all in on getting that book open?
I mean, the reality is you never have to shut it off. I mean, in my time at PEOs, and then we have the opportunity to connect with tons of PEO leaders, sales people, is that training is constant, it's ongoing throughout the year, and it has its ebbs and flows and focuses. But the reality is that when you get into the throes of the fall selling season, that is one of the first things to go.
Yeah.
That is one of the things that sales leaders look at their sales reps and say, like, we've trained for this, now let's go. The reality is, I would challenge sales leaders to keep that in. Your people really need that time, and they need to continue to be developed, particularly as they are getting wins, but also losses. Losses could be really, damaging to their psyche because some deals that they lose could be critical factors in the success of the entire year. And so helping them dive into it is going to be really important, and understanding why that happened and apply resources and strategy on how to fix things. Maybe someone's kind of North Star is just off a little bit, or like your focus is off a little bit to help them. But I also recognize your time is limited. And so sales leaders will pull that training time, your Tuesday training or your Thursday, skill sharpening session and role plays. Like, you'll pull those off the calendar to be able to focus more on working files, working deals, and trying to get those last ones over the line.
Okay, interesting. What does it look like going into the throes of the fall selling season in terms of that the capacity of work that these folks are going to be doing. Because you're saying that essentially need to training's gone. What's replacing it in terms of activities?
What's replacing it is primarily moving deals through your respective PEO sales process. That is a lot of inside selling, so selling to internal resources like underwriting, you know, sales leadership, finance departments. You know, PEOs have all these different names for different people who control the price.
Yeah.
But that's one of the big selling points. Two, you have to manage your calendar much more effectively to get as much in as possible. And because the funnel gets bigger, those underwriting departments get strained. So files don't come back as quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I do know some PPOs do a really good job of staffing up. They do cross training in those underwriting and pricing departments, but some don't have those capabilities. And so files come back slower.
Mm.
So now you're having more strategically positioned tech demos or benefit alignment calls or different things in the process. And so you start having a whole lot of more touch points with your customers to move those along. But the reality is they're just filled with a lot of sales calls because the end of the year, Q4, and really kind of starting in September, all these January 1, all these December 1 open enrollment periods, they all concentrate. And so it's a great sum of people, not only that are good fits for PEO, but have actually entered that decision-making window to either do it for the first time and do something differently than they have in the previous years, or transition to a new PEO because either the one they have is currently meeting their needs, or the costs aren't being contained the way they were supposed to, or they just, aren't getting the service they want. So you've got a lot more sales conversations with prospective customers than you will at any other point in time of the year.
Yeah. And, one thing that comes to mind is to make this easier on the rep, it would make sense to just be working your deals sooner, right? So start getting the data in, start getting quotes, start evaluating these organizations sooner. And we kind of talked about this a little bit before the episode about regarding, it's advantageous to not only the rep and the agent, but also to the business owner and the business that's looking for a PEO to potentially be shopping, say, October, of course. So talk a little bit about that. What does it mean to start getting the data full file completed earlier so that it's, not only you're able to manage your pipeline better as a rep, but it's advantageous for the business owner?
Yeah. I mean, that's the third thing you should be doing. So one, just to restate it, filling your pipeline, lead generation, marketing tactics, prospecting, however you do it, fill.
Goodbye training.
Yeah. And then two, and then you should be training it. Training because now, if you believe what I'm saying, or you've seen this happen in the past, you know that training will start to, take a back seat in the fall selling season. Yeah. The third thing you have to do is start educating your customers how your pricing and underwriting works at your particular PEO for when you enter that last part of the year. Because, and I know any PEO sales rep or anybody that's in the PEO industry this will resonate. Nothing is more frustrating when you've got a customer that you've been talking to, you've been educating, you've been saying like, hey, we need to get your file in September because we want to get into underwriting before you get to your renewal. And then sure enough, what happened on October 27th, they say we got our renewal and it's crap and it's 27% increase. We need your help. And you go, if we had done this 45 days ago, I could help you. I could still help you. I just can't help you as much as I could have had you listened.
Why? Can't they help them as much as they could have?
Because what happens in the PEO underwriting process is the underwriting leadership knows that if you have a January 1 renewal, like if you're bringing in a customer with a January 1 renewal, that they should have their renewal in their hands in and around October 5th through 15th. That's kind of what happens. Whether they're with a PEO, whether they're on an open market plan, that they're going to have it somewhere around 75 to 80 days in advance of that renewal. Because October or December is an open enrollment window. So it's really kind of a 60-day window that falls between October 1 and November 30th. So they say, if we get your renewal, take what you got from your current medical carrier or your current PEO who's underwriting you and who knows you best, who can see the medical loss ratios, see the claims, and we're going to take that renewal, and then we're going to apply our PEO's underwriting philosophy and thus discount. And so if you're here, we'll put you here. So we say, this is where you were going to be, going to be, and that's going to be
It's a small
3-6%. It's what it is.
savings.
What it could have been, though, is had we received that document, all those documents, clean data file in September, submitted it in September, and got back from underwriting. Underwriting knows they cannot ask for that renewal. They can try, but the reality is it's not available, and they know that. So they will underwrite that, and they will say, we won't consider what this increase is going to be. They're going to look at your, let's just say, $20,000 monthly medical bill.
Yeah.
And they'll discount that they feel is appropriate, accounting for the fact that they don't know what this renewal is. So let's say they put a 5% discount on. So your current bill is $20,000. They'll say, hey, we'll underwrite you on like plans, good medical relativity or harmony to what you have today. We'll put a 5% discount. And then you're sitting at 19. You're with the PEO. Current day, you're at 20, or present day, you're at 20. And then let's say you get a 20% increase in. Well, now you go up to 24,000. And we're still sitting at 19 underwritten. We got a $5,000 delta. We have 60,000 annually right here that we can leverage to not only one, control your costs, but two, perhaps subsidize some of the costs of transitioning to this PEO model to access the HR resources you need for your people and for your organization to grow and prosper. That all goes away if they see that renewal. Because like I said before, they trend it. So the key is to get it in that September, like optimal zone of underwriting, because you can maximize discount. And then it also puts the customer, and thus you, as their advisor, sales rep, advisor, what have you, in the catbird seat. Because if that comes back not a 20% increase, but rather a 2% increase, you can take that renewal, turn it into your underwriting department, demonstrate to them that there's a good medical trend, because insurance companies typically aren't in the habit of giving out small increases today. Yeah. This must be a healthy group. And then drive your price down further. All of which support taking care of that small business, the business owner's goals, their employees, their families, because it's not in a vacuum. That cost hits everybody. And so you being smart about it and educating your customer, and even just providing scenarios like, hey, let me tell you a story of what will happen to you this year. You're going to tell me you're real busy, everything else, we get to this in September, and you're going to forget about it, and you're going to forget why it's significant. Yeah. Can I just have 5 minutes of your time to tell you why it's so critical? Yeah. You can blow me off after that. You tell me you don't care, but I'm going to feel like I've done a good service for you and your organization, your employees, if you at least understand how our mechanism works in underwriting, and that this is when we want to do it. And then if we don't, fine, but at least you know.
Yeah. So there's kind of two angles to this. Let me kind of say it back so that I'm understanding clearly is like, you want to go and essentially lock in the rate that you can get when they are reviewing you without having the renewal information. So then you're getting from them what it'll cost an increase to some degree. And then there's also the potential that you end up getting your renewal, and that renewal is close to where they already are, only maybe a few percentage points up, and they're going to say really positive where you got your renewal from, whether you're out on the open market or you're with the PEO already. They're going to kind of trust in the renewal number and say we can actually be competitive because they probably didn't miss something critical in the group.
Not a whole year's worth of claims.
Over a whole year's worth of claims, because they have access to all of that. Right. So I think a huge part of that is that for people who aren't in a PEO as well as people who are in a PEO. And I think that's where people get a little confused, because it sounds like it's primarily for if you're going from PEO to PEO and you're sort of putting them against each other in a sense. But it's also on the open market or in other situations as well.
Yeah. Yeah. You are understanding how, for lack of a term, the game is played, and you are positioning at the advantage of the business owner and letting them give you the information if they're in, if PEO is a good fit or if it continues to be a good fit, letting them maximize that cost saving. Because the reality is there is a lot of value in ROI that can be accessed all throughout the PEO model, from the HR technology to HR best practices and how they can employers navigate employee relations issues and mitigate risk. The cost of healthcare premium has no ROI. It just doesn't. It's a commodity. It pays for what it is, and you either pay more or you pay less. So the fact that over time a PEO can deliver you services and support around your needs and priorities and things HR, you can you can get that ROI back, right? You can earn that back over time and get to a overall total cost of ownership that is a very big positive. You just can't in the insurance. It doesn't work that way. So when your price jack, it's for the same $2,000 20% plan with a 6850 max out of pocket, whether it's at $700 or whether it's $400. Wouldn't you rather just get it at $400?
Yeah.
And here's how we do that, or give you the best opportunity to.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I will say is understanding how the game's played. You also need to understand how your PEO responds. So if you're selling for a PEO and there are base checks that are going to require the renewal later, regardless of the whole scenario I just laid out, like you have to know that, because you could set your client up for a huge failure if you don't understand bid expiration, or medical expiration date, and manage that effectively. If you don't have a clear understanding of, will the underwriting department overreach and say, you know what, we want to look at it anyway. We're willing to cancel out whatever pricing we've ever quoted. Like you need to know how your PEO operates in order to operate in the best interest of the customer. Because if that's going to happen, this whole exercise I just described is a bad idea.
Yeah.
You just, the requirement is to know how it works.
So are you saying September then is the optimal time because it kind of threads the needle for most PEOs in the back office?
Yeah. Okay. It does thread the needle for most. And it's a good window to create non-rush decision. Like a PEO decision-making process, if it's the one you're buying for the first time, or you're considering changing, you don't want to be rushed through that process. So you can pound your fist on the table with your business owner prospective client and say, hey, I want to do this because here's what I also do. We don't want to rush through this process. We want to make sure you understand every component and why this represents a better way to do this than perhaps how you're doing it now. Have a smooth transition and implementation so that it's not rocky for your employees and their families, and everybody gets their healthcare cards and all their stuff set up on time. Oh, and not to mention the fact, like, you're going to be busy at the end of the year. Like, I understand this well enough to know, like, you do a lot of your sales in Q4 as well. So if we start sooner and we make a good plan and we execute that plan, it's going to be better overall. It just requires that you start to give me your attention in September. And I'm sitting here on, let's say, June 30th. Like, I just want you to know that. Like, you can't start any sooner because of the expiration components of the medical. We shouldn't start any sooner because it's not, this has to come down to a timing cycle that makes sense for you anyway. So I'm just telling you, September.
So, we're telling small business owners, be proactive, don't be reactive. You're telling them to go and try to.
Don't blow off the sales rep that said, like, hey, this really is the time. Like, heed their advice.
But I guess the question is if you're asking to be proactive and not reactive to whenever they get their renewal back and they should start taking action beforehand, how often to a business owner listening out there should they be going and doing this? Because if it's something they need to do before they get hit with a big renewal, it almost seems like it should be something they're doing almost every year or pretty frequently. So what's the frequency they should be thinking this is on that massive to-do list they have?
It varies by the customer owner, like the business owner's idea of how often they want to do this.
Yeah.
So if you've got historically good medical trend and you kind of have 7-8% like acceptable increases, and those aren't great, those are expensive, then you're not going to do this every year. Like you kind of just like, hey, I'm gonna take it, evaluate it, I'm gonna try and budget it in and account for that. So I don't need to play this game every single year just to ward off a 7 or 8% increase that I otherwise think is okay for the most part.
Yeah.
You're also not going to do it if you are with a PEO that's the right fit. So you're like, this PEO I'm with, whether it's this one or this one or this one. So it's who I want to be with. I just want the medical to work. So me playing this game of like this whole exercise, because the PEO evaluation is tricky.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to do that either, because at the end of the day, I know I want to stay with PEO X.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do that. In that scenario, I think it's a good idea every 2 to 3 years to base check, like keep the PEO honest. And we help companies evaluate that and determine when that's the right time in order to do that and kind of make sure that the PEO is not asleep at the wheel and thinks you're going to stay for forever.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you don't want to waste a lot of your time. So it's kind of line it goes. Like, also, you don't want to jump PEOs every year. So like, even if you're apt to do that, like, you also got to think about, do I really want to do this to my employees? Do I really want to do carriers every year? Do I really want to change payroll systems every year?
Yeah.
Some business owners that come to me are more comfortable with that. But so that's why I say it's got to line up with their psyche and what they're willing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with their organization, the tech savviness of the group, and if they're willing to switch, and if they, maybe if they're a small group, they understand the benefit of having to do those switches frequently. But if they're a larger group, I might say another, portal, another platform almost every year. Let's say you're a 27 person company that's with a PEO or not with a PEO. You also have to know your numbers, and we meet with so many great business owners that absolutely do, but maybe just don't think about it this way. Like, what is the increase you can afford to not have to switch on? And like, what is your threshold?
Yeah.
So if you're saying, hey, I know based on our margins, our projections, everything else, like we can we can sustain a 16% increase. We don't love it. We don't want to do it. We're going to fight like, hell to get that lower, but we could do that. If there's a year where you're going, hey, this employee I know had this go on. We're a 27 person company. We had something go on, and we had this employee had this. Like, this might be the year where we take it in the teeth.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the year to go do this exercise.
Yeah.
Like, seriously consider transitioning and get it done in September. Because if those things that you forecast might push you above whatever you determined your threshold is, that's the year you want to get ahead of it.
Yeah, so it's that year that you kind of had this nagging thought in your head of, I think we're going to get walloped later when we get this renewal number. I should probably go shop around, find a number, and get a quote that is below where we're currently at. If it goes back lower, then guess what? They might benchmark. You might have a good PEO sales rep there who's going to say, we can even drop that a little lower because you guys came back so well.
Okay. Absolutely. And so, I'm not one for business owners, we're one. Like, I don't want to waste our time doing this stuff. But if you have a good sense of that, put in place kind of an emergency plan. And that might be changing your PEO, that might be moving to a PEO because of the ability to insulate against that cost. Because again, there's no ROI on that insurance cost.
So we started at the beginning of this episode talking about how this is actually on the rep at the PEO. Mm-hmm. How do you coach a rep at a PEO to put that urgency into their prospects, into these business owners they're speaking to, and actually help them understand how much this can, impact them?
So you create awareness and have that attached to that business owner, in two ways. One, telling stories, telling specific experiences where this panned out or where this didn't.
Yeah,
and create some contrast between those scenarios. Something that, people live in stories, people remember stories. Something about that story will certainly attach to that individual.
Yeah.
So stories are the best way, like real stories, not contrived, not just like made up scenarios, but like ones where you could actually point to something real happening and what the impact was. Two is persistence. Like, don't be afraid. Like, if at the end of the day, your only goal, I know your goal is to make a PEO sale. You're not completely altruistic here. You want to make a sale and get on your trip and make more money. Yeah. But if you know at your heart too, like, I like this business owner, I like this business, I like what they have going on here, I'm going to make a few extra calls. Like, I might drive and drop off my PEO's mug or whatever, all with the intent of like, I know I'm doing this because if they listen, I can really help them. Not only help their business, but help take care of the employees and their families, individuals attached to that business. Even if I get a little pestering, I'm doing it in an act of something good.
Yeah.
And a lot of people struggle with that. Rejection, tough. It's in every sales role, but it's in the PEO space. Like, you get your teeth kicked in pretty frequently. And so one is just attaching for that business the PEO sales rep, like a little bit of encouragement. Like, you are trying to do something good. Like, if you execute this and really help that business stay below these thresholds, you may be able to not only help control their costs, but you may prevent them from having to lay somebody off, dilute their benefits down to a level where they lose really good people. Like, you are trying to do something good. And if that's their intent, you never know until you're looking into the eyes of the rep if that's like really what they're there for. But encouraging to do that right thing and like have a little bit of thick skin on the way to doing something good is something you can like.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you and that business owner are both going up against something that's unknown, which is what's going to be the renewal number from where they're currently at. So you're going in there to help them. And that falls in line. With our small business summer theme, I think it's that Get in there early. Bring a mug, bring a seltzer, bring summer. I don't know if you can bring a seltzer. I think that might be you definitely can't bring that. But you need to bring something summer related because you're trying to keep them sooner rather than you're not going in there with something about. You need to be persistent, talking to them early, letting them know, hey, this is beneficial to you on multiple fronts to take action, have that file completed by September, usually.
Yeah, find a creative way to help them remind. The story is a good way. Maybe just tell them I'm coming back. I'm going to come back with this, and you're going to give me 5 minutes of your time, and I'm going to remind you something really important. If you tell me to, buzz off at that point, I will.
Yeah.
So it's that is, I think it's also like putting in place good strategies, partnering with your PEOs, marketing department, like coming up with something that can break the static because everything looks the same and it all feels like the same pitch. Is tricky, and again, those business owners like may not be in their offices during the summer. They may be working more at home or remote or by the pool.
Yeah.
Finding creative ways to grab attention is really important. And the reality is PEOs should want to help all these companies across the board this way. And so what I find is when you're on a PEO sales team and you've got a good way, like tell everybody on your team. I think what happens in the PEO sales world is people get very possessive and territorial, and it's like I've got a good way to do this. Like I don't want to tell anybody else. And the reality is, there's so many small businesses out there that you couldn't touch them all if your life depended on it. So if you really and PEO sales reps are this way because people stay in this industry so long. One of the things they attach themselves to is like helping small businesses, everything that feels good around them. Well, isn't it better if more PEO reps are doing a better job serving more small businesses than just you're the one like high powered rep in a district office at some PEO?
Yeah.
Get the word out there, help everybody, you'll help more businesses that way.
We can lead the way on. Flip down and below in the comments, we'll even put a poll in there. If you guys want to put your best ways to contact folks early in the year around the summertime before we get into the fall selling season. So how do you get the attention of small business owners before we're into the fall? But put it down below. Awesome. Well, great, Ryan. I appreciate the insights there, as always, from your almost 2 decades now of experience in the PEO industry. So extremely valuable.
Yeah.
Thank you guys all for tuning in to season 3, episode 1. We will catch you guys here again pretty soon. Thanks again, Wagoneers.
Small business summer.